Yellowstone tourist outraged after drone terrorizes Mama Grizzly and cubs near Grizzly Lake. Visitors at Yellowstone National Park were left furious after a reckless drone operator was caught flying dangerously close to a mother grizzly bear and her cubs, sparking outrage among wildlife lovers and raising fresh concerns over tourist behavior in protected national parks. Now let's take a deeper look and uncover every layer of this story on our AI
So I
podcast.
want you to imagine an apex predator, right? Like a 400-pound mother grizzly bear.
Whoa, absolutely. The top of the food chain.
Exactly. She is perfectly adapted over millennia to fight off packs of wolves, rival males, whatever. I mean, she fears literally nothing in the physical world.
Right. Her instincts are completely honed to protect her cubs against, the most formidable threats the North American wilderness can throw at her.
Yeah. Yet, picture this. On a quiet May evening in Yellowstone National Park, this incredibly powerful creature was sent running for her life by a piece of plastic that weighs less than a single pound.
It's just a stunning evolutionary mismatch. I mean, we are looking at an animal equipped to handle intense physical confrontations, just completely short-circuited by a consumer gadget.
Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are unpacking a viral incident from Yellowstone that perfectly highlights this growing modern clash.
Right. It's this collision of irresponsible, tech-wielding tourists on one side and wild, undisturbed nature on the other.
Yeah, and think of it like this. Imagine someone bringing a blaring Bluetooth speaker into a totally serene library. Except, the library is filled with massive grizzly bears.
That is a terrifying library.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Because we really have to look at the scene to understand the mechanics of why this specific event triggered such a massive reaction.
Well, the setting is critical here. So the date is May 14th, and this happened near Grizzly Lake, which is a very popular wildlife viewing area in Yellowstone.
Super popular.
Yeah. And our subjects are a well-known mother grizzly named Beryl, and she has two cubs with her.
And the timing, right, mid-May.
Yes.
That dictates pretty much everything about Beryl's behavior in that month.
Exactly. She has recently emerged from hibernation, so her biological imperative is completely driven by a massive caloric deficit. She needs food.
I mean, she just spent months in a den, right? Just living off her own fat stores.
Yeah, and now she's nursing two growing cubs that are actively draining whatever remaining energy she has left.
That's exhausting to even think about.
It really is. Every single step she takes, every root she digs up, it's all part of a calculated metabolic equation. She literally cannot afford to waste energy.
Right, and that caloric equation is the lens through which we have to view this whole intrusion.
Definitely.
So there were dozens of tourists gathered at a safe distance around 6:30 p.m., just watching Beryl and her cubs naturally forage.
Which sounds like an idyllic Yellowstone evening, you know?
Totally. And among them was this man named Don Johnson from Idaho Falls. He was recording the bears on his iPhone, which, I mean, that's standard behavior for park visitors.
Right, everyone has their phones out.
Everyone. But while filming, he inadvertently captured a drone buzzing just like dangerously low into the frame.
It's wild to see. The footage shows this remote-controlled aircraft hovering so close to the animals that the bears could have easily swatted it out of the air.
Which is insane. How audacious do you have to be to fly a plastic toy right into the face of a mother grizzly?
It's an incredible display of entitlement, honestly.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the visceral reaction from the animals is what makes the footage so compelling, but also just so frustrating to watch.
Yeah, it's hard to watch.
There's this distinct moment where one of the cubs notices the drone. You see the cub become visibly startled and actually jump back in fear.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then as the drone keeps hovering there, the entire family abandons their foraging and just flees into the tree line.
And of course, the moment they run, the drone just shoots vertically back up into the sky.
Like it accomplished its mission or something in a completely unnatural interaction.
It really is the perfect visual representation of the imbalance of power between reckless human curiosity and animal welfare.
Absolutely. But we need to look at the mechanism of that fear. I mean, why does a plastic toy terrify a 400-pound bear more than, say, a pack of wolves would?
Well, the answer lies in the drone's acoustic signature and Beryl's threat assessment. Bears rely heavily on their hearing to detect danger.
Okay, so it's about what she's hearing, not just what she's seeing.
Exactly, because when Beryl encounters a wolf, she recognizes the scent, she understands the physical posture of the wolf, and she can predict its behavior. She knows how to defend against it.
She has a playbook for wolves.
Right, she has a biological playbook. But a drone offers none of those natural cues. It emits this high-frequency mechanical hum that biologically mimics the sound of swarming insects.
Oh, which bears hate. Right.
Yeah, swarming insects are a natural irritant for bears, but with a drone, it's at an intensely magnified volume.
So her brain doesn't just register that hum as a minor annoyance like a mosquito.
No, not at all. It registers it as an unclassifiable, omnidirectional threat. She has no physical body to strike, no scent to track, and no way to anticipate what this, hovering object is going to do next.
Wow. That has to be terrifying.
It triggers a massive physiological response. Her nervous system just initiates a severe cortisol and adrenaline dump.
And the biological cost of that stress response has to be immense, especially in May.
It's huge. She abandons the high-calorie foraging she desperately needs to survive the spring. And she forces her cubs to run, which burns precious fat reserves.
So the operator got a neat video for their social media feed?
Pretty much. But the hidden cost was actively endangering the winter survival odds of that entire bear family by forcing this totally unnecessary caloric expenditure.
That is just infuriating. And, while the bears are burning all those calories fleeing into the trees, the reaction back on the ground with the human bystanders reveals this bizarre psychological phenomenon.
Oh, the crowd reaction is fascinating.
Right. Don Johnson, the guy filming the video, later admitted he didn't even realize the drone was there at first.
Wait, really? He didn't see it?
No. He was staring so intently through his iPhone screen, just completely hyper-focused on capturing the digital memory, that he completely missed the loud buzzing piece of machinery ruining the actual moment right in front of him.
That is wild.
He didn't notice it until a Yellowstone Park ranger literally had to shout a warning to the crowd.
That right there, that is a real-world example of sensory decoupling.
Sensory decoupling. Break that down for us.
Yeah, so technological habituation has fundamentally changed how we process our physical environments. When a person views a majestic, potentially dangerous scene like a grizzly bear through a 4-inch piece of glass, their spatial awareness just collapses.
Right, they get tunnel vision.
Exactly. The brain subconsciously frames the physical reality of a wild apex predator as a television show or, a piece of digital content rather than a tangible event happening 20 yards away.
It creates this completely false sense of security. They feel safe behind the screen, just totally oblivious to their actual surroundings.
Which is incredibly dangerous in Yellowstone.
Absolutely. But here is where the crowd's reaction gets really complicated. The moment that ranger shouted and broke the spell, the tourists looked up from their phones, realized the bears had been chased away by a drone, and the mood shifted instantly.
I can imagine.
Yeah, Johnson noted that people were, quote, madder than hell. He even claimed if the crowd had caught the operator, they probably would have strung them up.
Wow. From passive observers to a vigilante mob in seconds.
Literally seconds. But we have to question the purity of that outrage, don't we?
What do you mean?
Well, were they actually fiercely protective of the bears' welfare, or were they just a mob of angry tourists whose own idyllic videos had been ruined by someone else's technology?
That's a great point. It is very likely a potent mix of both. Group psychology in these moments is just fascinating.
Yeah.
You have this crowd of passive, phone-holding bystanders who are abruptly forced to acknowledge a brazen violation of the natural order.
Right.
A collective protective instinct certainly kicks in. There is a deeply ingrained sense of fairness that gets violated when technology is used to harass an animal like that.
For sure. Nobody likes seeing an animal bullied.
Exactly. However, the anger is undoubtedly amplified by the disruption of their own consumer experience. They traveled all the way to Yellowstone to consume a pristine view of nature, and another consumer stole that from them.
They got robbed of their content.
Basically.
Well, that dual outrage didn't stop at the edge of Grizzly Lake. It moved seamlessly into the digital public square.
Of course it did.
Johnson posted his video to Facebook, and it quickly racked up over 30,000 views, sparking this massive wave of anger from animal lovers online.
I'm sure the comments were intense.
Oh, very.
Yeah.
The commenters heavily condemned the drone operator. People specifically pointed out the psychological impact on the bear, with one person writing, "She's confused by that drone. Not okay to do that."
Which is very accurate.
Yeah. And another commenter demanded that whoever was flying the device should face a, quote, huge fine.
And that digital aftermath functions as a modern mechanism for social enforcement, really.
How so?
Well, it is where the collective morality regarding our national parks is debated and reinforced. The public sentiment was unanimous in condemning the harassment, but,
Wow.
social enforcement only goes so far.
Right.
It ultimately collides with the functional limitations of the actual law.
Which brings us to a massive legal irony in this story. The crowd wanted to string the guy up. The internet commenters demanded massive fines. Don Johnson himself publicly called for drone harassment near wildlife to become illegal.
He wanted lawmakers to step in.
He did, completely missing the fact that this specific act already is a federal crime.
Yeah, the gap between the existence of our regulation and the public's awareness of it is staggering sometimes.
It really is.
Flying a drone anywhere within Yellowstone National Park, or any national park for that matter, is strictly prohibited by National Park Service regulations.
And this isn't some brand new rule, right?
No, not at all. This isn't a recent reactionary rule. The NPS implemented system-wide bans on drones years ago precisely because of incidents exactly like this one.
Right, because drones are a menace in these spaces.
We really are. Drones have historically crashed into sensitive geothermal features, they've harassed herds of bighorn sheep, and they've severely disrupted emergency helicopter operations.
Which is a life or death issue. And the penalties are heavy, too. This isn't just a minor citation.
No, it's serious.
Violators can face up to 6 months in federal jail and fines reaching $5,000. That is the exact huge fine the internet commenters were demanding.
But enforcing that law is a complete logistical nightmare.
Oh, I bet. I mean, here's where it gets really interesting. We are talking about Yellowstone National Park. This is a sprawling, rugged wilderness covering over 2 million acres across Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana.
It's massive.
It is the critical habitat for grizzlies, gray wolves, elk, and bison. You are asking park rangers to find a single perpetrator in a forest roughly the size of Delaware.
And that logistical nightmare completely neutralizes the threat of the $5,000 fine. The geographic scale of the park, combined with the evolution of consumer drone technology, creates this almost unsolvable enforcement problem.
Because the tech has changed so much.
Exactly. Early consumer drones were loud, they were bulky, and they had very limited ranges. The operator basically had to be standing relatively close to the device.
You could just follow the sound and find the guy with the huge controller.
Right. But today, drones are smaller, faster, and they utilize advanced radio frequency technology that allows them to be piloted from literally miles away.
So let me ask you this. If the penalty is a massive $5,000 fine and jail time, but the perpetrator can simply stand 2 miles away, hide behind a hill, and pilot a drone via a screen, is the law actually a functional deterrent anymore?
That's the million-dollar question, and based on this incident, you'd have to say no.
Yeah, because in this incident, despite the massive crowd of angry tourists, the shouting ranger, and the thousands of furious people online, the operator completely got away.
Just vanished.
Yep. Johnson stated he believed the person controlling the drone was simply hiding around the corner and behind a hill.
It exposes a terrifying loophole in modern conservation efforts.
It really does.
Traditional law enforcement relies heavily on physical proximity. A crime is committed, an officer responds to the location, and the perpetrator is apprehended at or near the scene.
Makes sense.
But remote-controlled anonymity totally breaks that traditional model. A park ranger cannot arrest a plastic drone hovering over a lake.
Obviously not.
And without specialized, highly expensive radio frequency tracking equipment, which, by the way, a standard ranger on routine patrol absolutely does not carry, triangulating the origin signal of that drone across miles of dense forest and mountainous terrain is nearly impossible.
So the operator can just, power down the controller, slip it into their backpack, and walk right past the angry crowd whistling, looking like every other tourist.
Exactly. The technology has vastly outpaced the logistical capacity of the Park Service to police it.
That's incredibly frustrating.
You can have the strictest federal laws printed on giant signs at every single park entrance, but they mean absolutely nothing if the enforcement mechanism requires a physical presence to combat what is essentially an invisible crime.
Right. And this fundamentally changes the dynamic of how we must protect these spaces moving forward, doesn't it?
It has to. The regulations are biologically necessary. We established that. When you introduce a drone into a sensitive ecosystem, you are turning a sanctuary into a stressor.
You're actively degrading the habitat.
Exactly. You are introducing unpredictable, unclassifiable acoustic and visual threats to animals that are already struggling to survive. But if legislation cannot bridge the gap created by technological advancement, the burden of protection shifts heavily.
So what does this all mean for us? We have covered a lot of ground today.
We really have.
We looked at the biological imperatives of a mother grizzly emerging from hibernation, and how a 1-pound piece of plastic can trigger a massive calorie-burning cortisol spike.
We explored those acoustic mechanisms that make a drone so terrifying to an apex predator.
Yeah, and we discussed the psychological phenomena of sensory decoupling, where an entire crowd of people filtered reality through their phones, missing the physical threat right in front of them until someone yelled.
Right. We also examined the dual nature of the crowd's outrage, blending that genuine protective instinct for the wildlife with the consumer's sheer frustration over a ruined experience.
Totally. And finally, we analyzed the failure of federal law to act as a deterrent when pitted against the massive geography of Yellowstone and the remote-controlled anonymity of modern tech.
That's a complex web of issues.
It is. But here's where I think it gets really interesting. The social enforcement we talked about earlier, the online outrage, the digital public square, that might actually be the only functional deterrent left.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Right. If a $5,000 fine doesn't scare an operator because they know they won't get caught by a ranger, perhaps the very real threat of being identified, recorded, and publicly shamed by a mob of 30,000 angry internet users will.
That is a fascinating shift in enforcement dynamics. It suggests that the responsibility for policing our natural spaces is democratizing out of pure necessity.
Yeah, the crowd becomes the park ranger.
Exactly. But that brings us to why this entire incident matters so deeply for you, the listener.
Why they should care.
Right. Because this story forces a mirror on our own behavior. It demands we ask a fundamental question about our role when we step into the wild.
Are we choosing to be quiet observers, respectful of the ancient, delicate metabolic rhythms of the ecosystem?
Or are we acting as invaders, prioritizing our personal entertainment and our digital content harvesting over the well-being of the creatures who actually depend on that habitat for survival?
It's about recognizing the footprint we leave, even when that footprint is in the airspace above the trees.
It's a stark reminder to respect the boundaries of the wild, whether the tool in your hand is an iPhone capturing a memory from a safe distance or a controller piloting a piece of hardware.
Because the wilderness requires our restraint. The animals cannot adapt their evolutionary instincts fast enough to keep up with the pace of consumer electronics.
They can't. They rely entirely on us to manage our own technological footprint.
Exactly. Well, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over. Try projecting this specific incident into the near future.
Okay.
Technology never regresses, right? It only becomes more integrated, more advanced, and more ubiquitous. If a single buzzing drone today can terrify a mother grizzly into abandoning her feeding ground, what happens a few years from now?
That's a scary thought.
Consider a future where this technology becomes even smaller, completely silent, and just overwhelmingly common. Could the constant, invisible, frictionless presence of our gadgets eventually alter the natural roaming, feeding, and survival behaviors of apex predators entirely?
Wow.
Are we on the verge of fundamentally turning our last remaining wild national parks into digitally disrupted, heavily surveilled landscapes where animals must adapt to our technology just to survive?
That is something we all need to be asking ourselves.
Think about that next time you look up at the sky.
Okay, one question for you. Should tourists who illegally fly drones near wild animals in national parks face lifetime bans and massive fines after incidents like the Yellowstone grizzly bear scare? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.